I now give the floor to Mr. Vladimir Voronkov.
Mr. President, Excellencies, I am honored to brief the Security Council on the 21st report of the Secretary General on the threat posed by Daesh to international peace and security and the range of United Nations efforts in support of member states in countering the threat. I am pleased to be joined by Assistant Secretary General and Executive Director of the Counter-terrorism Committee Executive Directorate, Ms. Natalia German, to present this report, which was prepared jointly by our offices and the Analytical Support and Sanctions Monitoring Team. Many thanks to Mr. Colin Smith. I would also like to thank Ms. Elisa de Anda Madrazo, President of the Financial Action Task Force, for being present today. As we will commemorate the 8th International Day of Remembrance of and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism tomorrow, I take this opportunity to honor the victims and survivors of terrorism around the world. The International Day continues to elevate the voices of victims, raise awareness, and inspire global solidarity in countering terrorism. This year's theme, United by Hope, Collective Action for Victims of Terrorism, emphasizes the power of shared experience and collective leadership among victims and victims' associations to drive meaningful change at all levels. To mark the day, the United Nations Office of Counter-terrorism will organize a high-level virtual event featuring messages from the group of Friends of Victims of Terrorism and senior United Nations officials. In addition, a global minute of silence will be observed, and a panel discussion will be led by victims and survivors from diverse backgrounds. UNOST will continue to work closely with member states and United Nations entities in further amplifying the voices of victims and in advocating for promoting and protecting their rights and fundamental freedoms. Mr. President, Excellencies, the threat posed by Daesh remains volatile and complex, with the group and its affiliates continuing to adapt and demonstrate resilience despite sustained counter-terrorism efforts. While multiple Daesh leaders have perished in the past few years, the group has managed to retain its operational capacity. There is no indication that killing of its deputy leader in charge of operational planning, which resulted from counter-terrorism operations in Iraq in March, will be any different. According to member states, the group may recover from such loss within 6 months. Africa remains significantly affected, currently experiencing the highest intensity of Daesh activity globally. The situation in West Africa and the Sahel remains particularly urgent. During the reporting period, a resurgence in the activity of Islamic State in the Greater Sahara was observed, while Islamic State West Africa province emerged as a prolific producer of terrorist propaganda and attracted foreign terrorist fighters, primarily from within the region. Arrests in Libya have revealed Daesh-linked logistics and financing networks with connections to the Sahel. In Somalia, Daesh mounted a large-scale attack in Puntland in anticipation of a large-scale military counteroffensive. The attack involved numerous foreign terrorist fighters. During the counteroffensive by Somali security forces, 200 Daesh fighters were killed and over 150 arrested. Although significantly weakened, The group continues to benefit from regional support networks and remains a threat in the absence of sustained counterterrorism efforts. In the Middle East, Daesh stays active in Iraq and the Syrian Arab Republic, working to restore its operational capacity in the Badi region and renewing efforts to destabilize local authorities. In the Syrian Arab Republic, the situation remains fragile since the takeover led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Daesh continues to exploit security gaps, engage in covert operations, and incite sectarian tensions in the country. The Secretary General's concern about stockpiles of weapons falling into the hands of terrorists has unfortunately materialized. Meanwhile, the security, humanitarian, and human rights situation in the camps and other facilities in the northeast of the Syrian Arab Republic remains deeply concerning. In Afghanistan, ISIL Khorasan continues to represent one of the most serious threats to Central Asia and beyond. The group has targeted civilians, minority groups, foreign nationals, while exploiting discontent with the de facto authorities. The use of new and emerging technologies by listed terrorist groups remains a growing challenge. These groups continue to use encrypted messaging platforms to secure their communications, leverage crowdfunding systems to raise funds, and increasingly experiment with artificial intelligence to boost propaganda. Member States reports that Daesh may be seeking to recruit experts in cybersecurity. These are gravely concerning. Mr. President, Excellencies, as we are aware, the United Nations is facing challenging times. Yet member states have remained united against terrorism. Despite differing views on the nature of terrorism and measures to counter it, they have consistently condemned in the strongest terms terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Allow me to offer some suggestions that the Council could consider in advancing counter-terrorism efforts while upholding member states' common rejection of terrorism. First, focusing on prevention. Time and again, the Secretary General has stated that prevention remains our best response to terrorism and violent extremism conducive to terrorism. It's more effective and cost-efficient to prevent terrorism than to remedy its impact. And recent years have shown focusing solely on the leadership of groups such as Daesh is not sufficient. Prioritizing long-term, principled responses that tackle the drivers of terrorism and the conditions conducive to its spread remain the most effective response to the threat. Second, compliance with international law remains essential. Terrorism and at times counter-terrorism measures can have dire consequences. A case in point is the grave humanitarian and security situation in camps and detention facilities in the northeast of Syrian Arab Republic. Tens of thousands of individuals, primarily women and children, remain in prolonged detention under unsafe and undignified conditions. This environment presents serious risks of radicalization to terrorism and are contrary to obligations under international law. I reiterate the Secretary General's call for the safe, voluntary, and dignified repatriation of all concerned individuals, with a particular focus on children, in line with international legal obligations and the best interests of the child. Third, engaging relevant stakeholders. In the Pact for the Future, world leaders have committed to pursuing a future free from terrorism. If that commitment is to become a reality, such a future cannot be materialized without the meaningful participation of all relevant stakeholders. In June, UNOST held a retreat of the United Nations Global Counter-terrorism Coordination Compact to enhance structured engagement between the United Nations and regional organizations. The event resulted in action-oriented decisions that will inform the engagement of compact entities with regional organizations in line with Action 23 of the Pact. UNOCT will also continue to promote whole-of-government and whole-of-society approaches to countering terrorism. Mr. President, dear colleagues, the persistence of the threat posed by Daesh, despite significant national and international efforts, underscores the urgency of sustained global cooperation through counterterrorism approaches that are compliant with international law, grounded in human rights, and gender responsive. The United Nations Office of Counterterrorism will continue to prioritize capacity building, information sharing, and the delivery of tailored assistance to support member states in their efforts to counter terrorism. I thank you.
I thank Mr. Voronkov for his briefing.